Hello, and welcome to another episode of our Learning and Design Mastermind podcast, a podcast that focuses on instructional design related topics, including the new trends and issues in our field. I am Daisy Barreto, your host, and with me in some place here on screen is our co-host, Sherry Conklin. And we are excited to be your guide as we explore the exciting topics in IT. In each episode, we explore the latest trends, case studies, practical tips from professionals in the field that can help you deliver exceptional learning experience. Here with us today is Jamie Ronan, an MIT alumnus. And Jamie, could you please tell us more about your position, where are you currently working, and what do you do?
Great. Yeah, thank you. Thank you again both for inviting me today. I'm excited to be here. So my name is Jamie Ronan, and I am currently a senior instructional designer in the Office of Distance Education and E-Learning at UNCW. I also serve as one of UNCW's Quality Matters QM coordinators. So that's part of my role as an ID. And prior to this current role, I worked at Cape Fear Community College as an instructional technologist. So in my current role as an instructional designer, I primarily work with faculty on the design and development of their online and hybrid courses, but I also have some projects I work on as well, whether that's related to like developing faculty professional development or support resources, as well as supporting several of our QM initiatives like our QM Faculty Fellowship Program and our Excellence in Online Education Award.
Thank you for sharing all of that. And then I know that you touch base a little bit on this, but I'm just like putting my cap of someone that has never worked on higher education, and I really want to understand what are some of really key roles and responsibilities as an instructional designer in higher education? What would you say? Because I know sometimes it can be various buckets, but like, if you could say, if you're going to be an instructional designer, I'm thinking about being an instructional designer in a higher education. What should I really pay attention? Because this is going to be a role and responsibility that I'm really going to have to be taking into consideration.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I always like to think of us as wearing several different hats or many different responsibilities in higher education. So one bucket is kind of that design and development, like directly with faculty. So that could look like redesigning a certain aspect of their course, like just an assessment, or like a learning activity, or it could be like redesigning kind of their course organization and how they structure their course. It could also be developing like a brand new course at UNCW for like a new program or a new online program. So kind of that development directly with faculty. And then I think we have like our training kind of role. So we'll do developing faculty professional development, as well as like facilitating that training to faculty, whether that's in like a small group setting or a department meeting. So we'll kind of focus on providing that training to faculty. Um, so, and then we have other projects that we'll lead, just like internal projects. Like that is kind of, I took on our QM Faculty Fellowship Program. So I worked on kind of redesigning that program for faculty, which I guess falls into professional development a little bit, but kind of lead on certain projects. And then we have like our technical kind of troubleshooting administrative side of it. You're kind of working with faculty to troubleshoot technology or design with technology, how to troubleshoot some of those issues. So I would say those are the kind of the big buckets of my current role.
Thank you, Jamie. I think like this really, highlights the key aspect, and especially if I were an instructional designer or an aspiring instructional designer and I wanted to get into the field of higher education, I would really appreciate just knowing what I should expect. And you really mentioned a lot about like, faculty, which it's going to lead to my segue for my next question. And just being a faculty myself, I know that faculty sometimes can be challenging, and so that's the thing that I was going to ask you. Maybe what are some of the key challenges that you face when working with faculty to develop the course materials, and I know sometimes it's not
Mhm.
maybe the faculty itself, but it can be just there are certain things that they want to do in their courses, or there are certain things that they need training before they can do this in their courses. So if you can expand, or what are some of the challenges that you have faced that maybe someone that is new to become an instructional designer or is in the role might want to know or how to overcome some of these challenges?
Yeah, definitely. I think one is maybe the technical side. You kind of touched on a little bit. I think like faculty may want to do something in their course, but they may not have that technical skill or training yet. So we can kind of guide them in that direction first, and whether it's something with LMS or like the Canvas that we use, or if it's just like a tool associated with the LMS, we might have to work through some of that training so that they can actually implement it in their course. So maybe the technical side a little bit. And then I think like time management and project management, it's more so not even on the faculty side, but just how we collaborate together, like making sure that we both are kind of meeting our timelines to develop course items. And kind of as the ID, you want to work on the faculty schedule to make sure you're, accommodating their schedule since they are so busy. So I think just working through that project management side of it and making sure that as the ID, I'm keeping everything on track, so that we do get things finished on time, especially if we're designing like a new course. There's a lot of components that go into that. So just having like a clear timeline to work through, I think, is one of the big components. And I also think just like translating what works online versus face to face. I think sometimes a ton of faculty might work face to face, but they're new to the online space. So just working with them to see what might work well that they can take over from a course, but maybe something they kind of need to re-envision for the online space. And then with that, I think accessibility is a big thing to navigate through. Just there's tons to learn with accessibility, and I feel like there's always something new or evolving with it, just with the way technology is. So I think um, when we do translate content online, then that accessibility component comes in and kind of teaching faculty what that means and how they can kind of mitigate some of those accessibility items or student barriers.
Thank you, Jamie. And I don't know if Dr. Conkle is going to have like, a question about this, but I think like I see you mention about like project management, and
Mhm.
that is definitely a part that a lot of people struggle, and I know that you were working with faculty and doing that project management. I don't know if you could give just like a few
Mhm.
tips and maybe advice for people that, you know, what should they, think about when they are doing their project management plan, or things that they may need to be really pay attention because, oh, this can lead you to scope creep, like, or
Mhm.
just things that you have experienced that maybe you might help people that, they're not too much into project management, but they would love to learn more about on how to do it well.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like that's something I've evolved like my skills over time, since working as either an IT or an ID. I think one is kind of working backwards from that timeline. So whether it's with the faculty or just like another project, like looking at what your deadline is and working backwards to kind of chunk that into pieces is helpful. With faculty, I think just keeping everyone on track. So maybe schedule. I like to schedule our next meeting. Like if we're meeting one week, I like to schedule our next meeting, whether that's 1 or 2 weeks out, or if it's more, depending on the project. But always just kind of having that next touch point scheduled if the faculty is interested in that. That's always been helpful. And then one thing for me is just like blocking out kind of chunks of time if I do need to work on something for a project, kind of giving myself space to work on that. Because sometimes our schedules can get so busy. So if I don't give myself that dedicated working time, that's kind of helpful to keep myself on track. But yeah, I think working back from the deadline, looking at kind of what those key components of the project are and making sure you're hitting those benchmarks. And they may not be so formalized when you're working with faculty, but even if I do it for myself, like I have the timeline mapped out and then I kind of translate that for the faculty member, is helpful. And then maybe we have our own kind of timeline we're working off of. But it does depend, I guess, on the project, whether it's a faculty member or an internal project. But those are some tips I think I found helpful.
No, I think like, you really touch base in a couple of things that's, I mean, sometimes it may seem like, oh no, this is, oh, just touching bases with the faculty, right? Because it's like, people can get busy and then you don't have that next point of connection. And then
Hmm.
because of doing that, but also like, as you said, the backtracking is a good way of just like, here's my deadline. What do I need to do? And then chunking that information to achieve that goal, which is, let's say it's like, at the end of the month, so I think it's very important to
Hmm.
do that. And you mentioning just even blocking your time, I think like that's something that I even need to be more cognizant of myself. Like this is my time to just do this, like to do this task for this project or for this
Hmm.
particular context. So I really appreciate you sharing all that. And on that, like
Wait,
leading.
I was like, I think Sherry had her
yeah.
hand.
Sure.
So I think a lot of times when people are going into this, they think they might have a project and they're working on it, and then they conclude it, and then they start working on another project. Can you kind of discuss, what's the average number of projects you have going on, and what your daily activities kind of look like? And then I know it's threefold. And then, what is the average time span to complete, let's say, a course development with a faculty?
Hmm. Yeah, those are great questions. I think for a faculty member development, it depends. We have had like year long, so like 2 semester developments, and that's like I feel like that was ideal because we really got to space out that design and then development timeline. I think in the past they were more condensed timelines, so maybe like a couple months, and that's kind of a speed design and development. I think it depends on like the programmer who we're working with is, how we decide that timeline. And then I think certain projects I think our office does a good job of balancing the workload for instructional designers. So I think we'll have like 1 or 2 smaller projects maybe happening at the same time. And then maybe there's like a larger scale project that we could work on in the background that kind of spans a larger period of time. But I think we've done a good job of balancing that workload for the amount of projects. And then it just kind of depends like what project it is, and if it's more immediate, like dedicating more time to that project, or and then if there's a larger scale project, I can kind of space that out a little bit more. I think that answered. If I missed a part, let me know.
Yeah, and what are your just daily when you're not working on
Hmm.
projects? What are you doing?
Yeah. I think one part is like if I have any faculty like requests, like just smaller things. So if they needed help on something or troubleshooting, that could vary on the day. Maybe some days I won't have any, but some days I might have multiple of those faculty requests. And those are more immediate because they need help in the moment, or if it's more like a technical thing for a current course. Then we have, trying to think, projects, like I said, dedicated project time. And then it could just be developing something in a course. So maybe like I'm creating like a mock-up of an assignment in Canvas, creating possibly like a template that I might want to show a faculty member and see what their thoughts are. So a lot of it is probably in Canvas, like doing either some development items for faculty based on what we've agreed on, or coming up with ideas, like mocking something up. Or it could just be like research, like looking into a certain tool or playing around with something. If I have time in my schedule, like looking into different tools and things like that. So I think, like I said earlier, we touch on a lot of different responsibilities, and the day is honestly very different every day, which is what I like about instructional design. I feel like no day is the same, just depending on what we get, which I think is fun because it keeps it interesting. But we do have a set schedule of those buckets, so you can kind of have a little bit of predictable structure, but also every day kind of looks different.
Thank you, Jamie, for just sharing that. I think like all of that is like, great information, and it does really capture more the essence of everything that you're doing, and then also even that flexibility, which I agree with you. I like that the notion of like
Mhm.
a week, every day is not the same. And with that, like I was gonna ask you is like, what are some important consideration for someone that is looking to pursue a career in instructional design within higher education? And I'm just gonna give you an example. Maybe I am graduating from the program, right? And then I wanted to prepare myself to become an instructional designer in higher education? What are some of the things that I need to consider? Or maybe I'm not graduating. I'm already an instructional designer, and then I am maybe in corporate and I want to go to higher education, or I am trying to really move transition careers. What are some of the things that you think are important for someone to prepare for to pursue this career?
Yeah, I think one is just like some of those skills like collaboration and communication. I feel like being comfortable with that aspect of being in a collaborative environment. We work a lot with faculty or just subject matter experts on projects or course development. So I think just having that collaborative mindset is really helpful, and kind of knowing that you may expect that in higher education based on the projects you have. I think like problem solving, I feel like we have a lot of like kind of problem solving technical things and just being comfortable with troubleshooting it, kind of playing around with things. And like you don't always need to know the answer. You can kind of give yourself that space to learn. I feel like I'm learning every day. And I feel like you can take time if you're presented with a problem or something you're not sure about, you may have the ability to kind of research or problem solve it. So I think that's helpful for someone kind of knowing that. I think with higher education, if it's possible to get like an internship or some type of experience in higher ed, even before you get into that role, that is helpful. That's kind of what I did. When I was in the MIT program, I got an internship at Cape Fear Community College, which really helped me see that I wanted to work in higher education. Even though my undergrad was in elementary ed, I knew I wanted to stay in education, I thought, but just having that internship or that experience helped me really see that that's what I wanted to do. So I think just getting a glimpse into that higher education world can be helpful if at all possible. But yeah, I think, like I said, just some of those skills that you might encounter, like collaborating, communicating, problem solving, and just being flexible. I think, like you mentioned, Daisy, just that flexible structure is, I feel like, very common in higher education.
That's wonderful to hear. And one of the things, and then Jamie, if that not occurred to you, because I think like one of the things that I keep always, or that I've heard a lot, is that sometimes, especially when you mention communication and and then how to collaborate, a lot of people don't know how to do that, or they engage in some sort of someone that don't want to do this particular task, or there's like that initial conflict, right? Like, or maybe just that rock in the middle of the road. And I wonder if you have faced something like that, and then how did you overcome, or maybe even just like strategies, for people like, hey, you may face faculty that will not, and I'm just going to give here an example, like that they do not want to use a particular technology, or they don't use the LMS, like, how could you communicate better, or just like pursue them, like persuade them to see the benefits and challenges and help them out to overcome that block? Do you see what I'm saying?
Definitely, yeah. I think something I've learned is like the relationship building and building that trust is key. Because I have done in the past where I didn't have the best relationship yet, or we were new to knowing each other. And sometimes like then I would try to jump into suggesting something and they may not be as open to it. But over time, as we built that relationship, I could tell the faculty member might have been more willing to look into it because they trusted me and our relationship. So I think if possible, just kind of easing into it if things aren't going as well, and just starting to build that relationship over time so that they can get to know you. And then they may trust you a little bit more on your suggestions and things like that. I think with other skills, like taking courses or like professional development for yourself has been helpful. Like I know I've taken like some LinkedIn learning courses to just kind of explore whether it's like project management or like public speaking, things like that. You can kind of practice a little bit, maybe with some professional development for yourself. But I think just for faculty, that relationship building is really key, and just giving your space to get to know that other person. Especially if like you're on Zoom, it can be even harder to build that relationship. So giving yourself some space and time to build up to that, to work through those. And I think with faculty, like always following up on your promises, like if you say you're going to do something, make sure you do it, because that can also build that relationship as well. So I think like organizing everything and keeping yourself on top of everything will help as well, so that they can see that they can trust you with the work that you're doing.
No, thank you, Jamie, just to provide all the information. I do think, like, as you said, like, building that relationship is so important. And I appreciate you sharing that. The other thing, too, that I appreciate you sharing was like just the professional development. Sometimes we think like, oh, no, I, I've got my training. I don't need anything else. I'm
Mhm.
good. But I think like all of us have our strengths and our weakness, areas that we could improve more. And you pointing that out, just like, taking those opportunities to just improve yourself, right? To become better at your job, which then is going to lead you to my final question for this. What advice would you give to a new instructional designer or designers about working effectively with faculty and other stakeholders?
Mhm. I think one is giving, like I said, kind of giving yourself grace. Like, things may not be perfect the first time you're working at, like, especially if you're new to the field. Like, that's how I felt. I was always wanting everything to go perfect and great. And sometimes you will have those bumps in the road, like you mentioned. So kind of giving yourself, like, don't be so hard on yourself if something comes up. Communicate with your team if you do have others on your team, like working with them as well for maybe advice or things like that. And then going back to that relationship building, just following through with your promises, making those small moments in your relationship with your faculty, um, offering to meet, if you have that ability, like offering to meet face to face or Zoom, like accommodating the faculty members' preferences, and making sure that you're meeting their needs. And like during a meeting, asking them, where they want to start with the meeting or things like that, to really show that you're interested and invested in their goals and their needs. But I think really that communication and building that relationship and trust is going to really go a long way when working with faculty as well as other stakeholders.
Thank you, Jamie. I appreciate you so much for you to being here, taking the time to just share some of your expertise and your work with us. I'm sure others that are watching us online are definitely like, or listening to, can definitely appreciate that opportunity just to know what an instructional designer higher education does. And I appreciate you sharing all that.
Yeah, thank you so much again for having me.
Thank you. And I'll see you guys on another podcast.